Good day and welcome to this week's episode of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. I am back. Thanks for watching. Thanks for continuing to support Strictly Legal. Thanks for continuing to support WESN Content Capital. And once again, I'm happy to bring the law and you. Of course, you can stream us on WESN CC as well as traditional media. And of course, our podcast, Strictly Legal with Rondell Donawa. So today we are going right into it. We're going to speak about exploring the criminal sentencing system, particularly in this jurisdiction, Trinidad and Tobago. And I have a very special guest. His name is Mr. Daniel Ishmael Khan. I almost say Israel. Ishmael Khan, attorney at law. And just a bit about him. Daniel, he was called to the bar of Trinidad and Tobago in 2006. He was a former inspector of prisons. For 6 years, that's 2010 to 2016. He was also a former member of the Sentencing Commission. Daniel's contribution to the law on sentencing includes being lead counsel in 2016 in a landmark case, sentencing case of Aguilera, and his 2012 Inspector of Prisons report and its focus on the issue of rehabilitation. Daniel is doing a lot of work with respect to the proposed prison reform or trying to advocate for persons particularly on death row. And I would like to welcome him to the set so that we can speak more about sentencing. A lot of time people think, okay, why is it that a sentence is so low? Some persons are so incensed by crime, and we often wonder, what are the judge's thoughts? What is the law relating to sentencing, particularly the guidelines, etc.? So, Daniel, Mr. Khan.
Yes, hi, Donawa. Thank you for having me. A great pleasure to be on the show, and sentencing is a touchy topic.
Indeed. And thanks for being here. I know you, as I said, you've been doing a lot of work with respect to social justice and the reform of the prison system.
Yes.
Of course, we understand. I mean, we have done previous episodes with noble guests where we spoke about, the different types of crimes, etc. What are the consequences? Of course, you have sentence, you have imprisonment, you may have fines, particularly. But in terms of punishment of sentencing, can you just take us through what do the court look at, particularly when a person is found guilty and when they have to sentence that offender?
Yes. Well, sentencing forms an integral part of the criminal justice system. After the fair trial and you have a conviction, here's the part society relies on to achieve the aims of punishment. Those aims of punishment are well known. One is preventative. So you have a dangerous criminal, you put him in the four walls of the prison, you lock him up, and while he is there, he's prevented from committing further crimes. You have what is called a denunciation. By this sentence, we make a statement that the offense that you committed, that we have proved you committed after your fair trial with this conviction, and we are saying that type of offense has no place in our society, and I'm going to punish you for that. So the very nature of the sentence says our society denunciates these actions. Then there is what we focus on, deterrence. We want the criminal justice system to reach a point where they deter this offender from offending, and then also prison is so bad, we are going to deter other offenders. The last one, which has been what I want to be my life's work, is the focus on rehabilitation. Because here you have an opportunity to take a person that's clearly committed a wrong, and you have an opportunity to rehabilitate him. And that is the topic that really has the questions on it.
I mean, we speak so much about rehabilitation.
Yes.
And often, we wonder, okay, why is it that persons are against rehabilitation? Why persons are against, having someone come out into society and reintegrate?
Yes.
There seems to be some fear.
Well, I think the fear is common sense. This is not an innocent person. This is a person by our laws that went through a fair trial and is convicted of doing a serious wrong. But the problem lies is not all convictions will lead to a life imprisonment. You have someone that robbed, let's say they get 15 years, they serve their time, they have to come out. They have to come out. You can't put them away for life. So while you have them there, try to rehabilitate them, and let the system, when the time for them to come out, if they no longer pose a risk, reintegrate. But society is not forgiving, and we know why.
Yes, yes.
You know?
Indeed. So let's deal with sentencing, particularly in murder cases.
Yes.
We know that the automatic sentence is death.
Is death.
Right? And there would have been numerous judicial challenges
Yes.
with respect to, let's say, that death penalty.
Yes.
And many persons would have, as the local parlance states, get off. Right?
Yes, yes.
Now explain in terms of why is it that we still have, one, the death penalty.
Yes.
And two, in terms of instances where, I know we will get to a notable case that
Yes.
you would have been instrumental in terms of why does those sentences now change to, let's say, life.
Right. So we have the death penalty in Trinidad as a sentence. There's a famous case, Pratt and Morgan, that we all know as students, that said, yes, the death sentence is legal, but if you don't execute the person, carry out the death sentence within 5 years, you can't carry it out again. So it was that all those people, and it was hard to complete a death sentence in 5 years because, you know, the appeal, there are two appeals. You appeal to the Court of Appeal, you appeal to the Privy Council, and pretty much that takes more than 5 years.
Yeah.
The last person to be hanged was someone called Anthony Briggs. That was right after the Dole Chedi gang of them. That was in 98 or 99. And after the 5 years, everyone started to get life. Eventually, they got it automatically, but eventually the court said, no, you have to hear their circumstances. In 2018, a case called Narish Prudram, later approved in 2022, and the Privy Council said, hear their individual circumstances. Don't broad brush everybody. So now, instead of getting automatic life from the death sentence, you either get a term of years or you just get life. And a term of years, I think, is what is causing controversy, because they have gone from the death sentence to a life of 35 years, term of years. And that bothers people. That person killed somebody. Why do they only spend 35 years in jail?
But why?
Why is because the law has recognized that in a circumstances where imprisonment serves no more purpose, that this person is rehabilitated, poses not a threat to society again, that person can be released. But, you know, we started with an eye for an eye. You killed, we kill you. And it's moved from there through the development of common law, not by legislation, because on legislation is death. And it will come a time, if the public is aware enough, that they will have an uproar that these sentences are too low. There is a resentencing project that the criminal bar is doing, where all those inmates, up to 50 of them, that were previously sentenced to life have to be given individual sentences. And to the uproar of the public, there will be, the majority of them will be getting fixed sentences because it is believed that they're rehabilitated. And, well, not all of them, and no longer a risk of society.
But who assesses whether or not they are no longer a risk?
Yes. Well, the sentencing structure really has come a long way. So prison does well in having a biosocial report prepared by prison, because this person has been in prison. So it is the prison that will have what's going on, a biosocial report, there's a probation officer report, there's a psychological report to see about this person, a psychiatric report, has he have any, you know, and all of them, once it is assessed that this person has low risk, so that is the safety valve a bit. If they're assessed at being risk offending, they're not going to be released. And also the court is utilizing the probation officer department / welfare as a kind of supervisory. Once that person leaves, let's keep a tab on them and help them reintegrate. But, you know, society is not going to be happy with that because the person offended once.
Yeah.
But
But there is there was a recent historical case where this YTC
Yes.
prisoner at the time, he's a cultural person as well, he would have been released recently.
Yes.
After serving some time.
Yes.
Right, and for murder.
Yes.
Right, and that in itself was a historic moment.
Yes.
And one of the reasons was that he got high recommendation from persons or from high authority within the prison system as well as others. I'm not sure if obviously you're familiar with that particular matter.
Yes.
Or particular release, but tell me, in those circumstances, what has the court looked at to consider the release of this particular individual who was on a murder charge?
Well, it's important. Murder is one offense. But we know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder. So, for instance, that person had committed that offense when he was under 18 years old. And generally, as a society, we kind of give a little bit of forgiveness to youth. And so they really look at a number of things. The 2016 Aguilera case had really set out a proper step. You're going to take a starting point. You're going to look at all the aggravating factors, and you're going to give it an overall criminality. And then you can go upwards or downwards based on the offender. Perhaps the offender was very young. Perhaps he was under the influence of someone else. Perhaps he had a lesser role and he didn't really, a number of things can have a sentence be reduced, taken into that consideration. So the public may be concerned that the most extreme cases are treated leniently, but in my experiences, it is only those with that have been reports of low risk that have been considered a fair just to release them after serving long sentences of somewhat 25 or 30 years.
Now, you mentioned the Aguilera case, but,
yes.
but in terms of what the court looks at
yes.
when sentencing, but this is not only, well, this can't be just for murder, or this is not for murder. This is for lesser criminal offenses.
Yes, yes.
So can you just explain in terms of a lesser criminal offense?
Yes.
How does the court discount the time that one will serve?
Well, the Aguilera has three main steps. You want to put the starting point as the overall criminality. Let's say someone has robbed or a home invasion, or let's say larceny. So there's no individual. You have stolen 5 tanks of gas. We're going to mitigate because we realize you were a poor person, you did it for this reason. Or you're part of a gas stealing gang. We're not going to mitigate that, and we're going to give you a harsher sentence. So they look at all the factors, why the intention, why the person did that. So it's across the board. The second most important part about Aguilera is the 1/3 discount, which is guilty pleas. Aguilera, in 2016, firmly set out, when you plead guilty, whatever we would have given you, if you were convicted, we're giving you 1/3 off. And that has put the accused in a strong position.
And as 1/3 of the maximum.
The starting,
sentence,
not
point.
the maximum. The maximum is like the most you could get. So let's say it's life, but they decide you, based on the criminality, I'm calling out 30 years. But if you plead guilty, and you're pleading guilty because you're saving the court's time, you get 1/3 off. That means 20 years. You're getting the whole 10 years off. You're showing your remorse. You're saving the victim from having to give trial. You're helping the backlog. You're accepting you're done wrong. And a man that's accepted that he's done wrong is more likely a man to be rehabilitated. So there's that. That is the second stage. And the time served. Murders, especially because of no bail, and any indictable offense that they don't get bail, they wait 10 to 12 years waiting to plead guilty, because you can't plead guilty in the magistrate court. So the Aguilera confirmed that any time waiting in trial is automatically reduced off the sentence, and once you get your sentence, you now serve your sentence. A remand prisoner and a convicted prisoner is 2 different persons. Convicted prisoner knows his sentence, can have some sort of focus. The remand prisoner is just there waiting.
But I love how you stated that remand prisoners and convicted are 2 different subsets.
Yes.
But obviously, as we know in our current system, remand prisoners take forever
Yes.
to get their just
Yes.
trial.
Yes.
So therefore, a lot of times when it reaches to the point where the trial has been, the trial has concluded,
Yeah.
they would have found guilty,
Yes.
and then the sentencing has now occurred. A lot of time, they come out in 2 years.
Yes.
Or basically their sentence is suspended, but not suspended,
Yes,
but they have
yes,
served.
yes.
And the public is wondering, okay, why is it that, okay, they found guilty and they not understanding that they would have been in remand?
I definitely think, and I'm a member of the criminal bar that intends to have an education push, because society has to accept the judgments handed down. That is where it gets its social force from. Not that they have the power, that the sentence and the law itself is accepted by society. And we are in the legal system. We know that there's not much faith in the legal system. I mean, we are not in the judiciary, but we are connected. So with public education, with understanding, yes, this person is coming out in 2 years, but the truth, he was there for 20 years. A sentence should be as close to the offense as possible. But I think education has a greater role in making our legal profession stronger, our system stronger. If and the criminal bar and shows like this take the time to explain the law, and sometimes when you explain it, it's accepted, and sometimes it's not. And if it's not accepted by society, it should change. Law has to find its approval within greater society. So there's reform. There's reform of sentencing needed.
And before we get into the reform, I want to really discuss a notable case that you were involved in. I'm not sure if I have his first name correct.
I call him
W. James, right?
Yes.
W. James, right?
But
W. James.
Yes.
And this matter was a 1996 murder matter.
Yes.
And in the end, I mean, he was sentenced to hang.
Yes.
And recently he was freed. So just give us a bit of a history of this matter, because I found this a very, very interesting piece of information.
Well, Wenceslas James, I'll say it once. W. James was recently released 2 days ago. His co-accused, he was convicted with his co-accused. His co-accused was Anthony Briggs. And anybody watching, do a Google dive. You will see Anthony Briggs is the last person hung in this country. Some reports have W. James as hung as well. He looks on the internet as a ghost. And sadly, in the prison system, his file wasn't addressed. He kept on death row for 20 years, the longest standing death row inmate ever. 20 years, and obviously he's still on a death warrant, but he's not shaking it up. He doesn't shake it up. And eventually, when it came to my attention, we filed a constitutional motion and said, okay, you can't execute him anymore, 20 years, clearly. Time for resentence. And when he came up before the court, he's been there for 32 years. His reports were very good. He had a lot of progress in prison. The circumstances, I mean, it is still murder. I'm speaking to a lawyer, so you might, but when you have a non-legal following, it is still murder he committed. But he was an accessory to Anthony Briggs, who went outside the scope of what he thought. So when two people commit a robbery and one person kills, even if the other person didn't kill, like W. James, he is going to be sentenced to death. And based on the lesser role he played, the judge, we had the probation report, all these things, they considered the 32 years to be sufficient, meeting the aims of punishment. And he was released. His mother was almost 100 years old. It's been a case we've been fighting for 5 years.
She's alive?
She is alive. Wow. Every year, when I started the case, every Christmas, people will be like, I don't think I can make it if my son doesn't come out on Christmas. But she lived the 5 years, and they held each other in the arms. And, I can say, at least for this client, I believe he's rehabilitated. I believe that one day it really was his co-accused. And while it's hard to sympathize with a killer, someone who took part in a joint enterprise that led to a murder. It was a testament that perhaps our prison system can offer rehabilitation, and perhaps someone can reintegrate into society. He is almost 60, and I wish him luck.
And just not to prolong it, but when I was reading it through the death penalty project, I want to just speak about a bit of that. When Mr. Briggs was hanged, he was next.
He was next.
He was literally about to face the gallows.
Yes, he was next.
Right?
It was read
in
to
that
him.
Same breath.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't have the answer why he wasn't hanged. He doesn't have it. You know, you would expect the attorney knows. He dodged a bullet. You know, he should be dead.
And then they told him that it's not his time.
It's not his time. I have theories. Maybe somebody filed something there, maybe something, but he was supposed to be dead. And he is alive. And in the last 30 years, he has made progress in prison and done everything he can. And he's not a threat to society, of course, to the reports. He did a terrible thing. He snuffed out an innocent life. He was part of that plan. But I think he can still make a contribution to society despite what he did. That is what I think. I can't see the future. But I think at least in these terms. And I think his case is an example that sentencing, yes, has to achieve preventative and deterrent and denunciation. But rehabilitation is important because based on my numbers, 90% of inmates come out. When I was inspected, that's the figure they gave me. Maybe it's less. 10% is lifers, but you're talking about people there for 20 years. So I would like a real focus on rehabilitation.
And let's talk about the death penalty project.
Yes.
I know this is a UK-based project,
Yes.
but they would have published stories based in our jurisdiction.
Well, yes, they are a UK-based solicitor firm that I have met maybe 12, 14 years ago because they do various things. And we have the death penalty because we took our history from England, Mother England, and they had the death penalty, but they moved on. We have it because we have the saving laws clause. So if we have to get rid of it, we have to have constitutional reform. But they have made it one of their missions to go in all the different Commonwealth countries and assist people. And so when I spoke with them about the case, they had a lot of background. At the time when we filed it, it was, breaking new ground. Now it's common. It's a floodgate for people to be resentenced. But they have done really, really well. England doesn't think they need death penalty. I have my views, but it's whether the Trinidadians want it or not. I think if they don't want it, let's take it off the books. Let's not kind of have this fakeness about it.
Do you think it's an issue because of the fact that, I don't want to get into the politics,
yeah,
but it becomes a political issue.
Of course.
And obviously because persons are incensed. Based on the discussion, it appears many people, or I wouldn't want to say the majority, but a large portion of the population are still for the death penalty.
I would say,
but
yes,
because of the fact that crime is at its high and it is uncontrollable, I should say.
Yes.
But I think the issue is that if there's a death penalty, why not utilize the death penalty rather than have it on the books and not pursue it?
Yes. Well, they don't take it off the books because it looks like a soft on crime. And they don't go through it because it's going to breach some international relations and all that. Not relations, but obligations. And so it's a quagmire. It's just there. But if we take it off the book, we can really get down to work on the other. Like, if you really want to sentence someone, okay, well, you execute them. And if we categorize murders, because excessive use of self-defense is murder. That person shouldn't get the death sentence. If you attack me and I start to defend myself and I get a little out of hand, that should not be murder. That should be some sort of other offense. Provocation, all these laws. So I believe you can only really go through with the death penalty if you categorize the murder. And that's criminal bar. Well, Ishmael Khan has been, advocating that for 20 years, more than that. But the criminal bar is making their representations, their joint select committee. Categorize murder. And then we're staying away from death sentence. I think that's a big topic, but categorization of murders will go a long way in sentencing and backlog in matters.
Let's speak about the Criminal Bar Association. Now, you're part of the Criminal Bar Association.
Yes.
And there's often a clamor for more attorneys to to be involved in the criminal bar.
Yes.
But I know you all have been making a lot of representation. You did mention that you are that you will be before the joint select committee.
Submissions,
Tell me more about the work of the Criminal Bar Association. What representation you all hope to achieve through these committees?
Well, the Criminal Bar Association was revitalized, let's say 2 years ago, under the leadership of my father, Head of Chambers, Ishmael Khan. And we've had some social events, but one, we're looking to encourage younger attorneys to join. We make representations on legislation. We are doing public outreach, public education, I should say. This specific topic of resentencing is one of a few topics that we hope to raise, important issues that aren't just about criminal law, jury trials. And this resentencing project, both educating the public and when we want to train, mentor young attorneys, and eventually soon we will reach out and you could join with our resentencing project. We have about instructions for more than 50 prisoners that have to be resentenced. And that way, because you are an attorney knowing, you learn from other attorneys.
Yes.
And it's important that, we come together and really show lawyers have a real purpose in society,
Yeah, and I mean, there's always the myth that, why criminal lawyers defend the criminals.
Yeah.
Right? But there's a constitutional, at the end of the day, there's a legal obligation as an attorney. And everyone has a right to a fair hearing and a fair trial by virtue of the Constitution.
Yes. You use the term get off, which, we don't like.
Yeah.
But it is, we tell ourselves, and I long believe it, cab rank rule. If it is a basis, you represent someone and you don't withhold your services because of your own moral view of the case, because then everything collapses. I have to believe that this person needs a fair trial. I'm not helping him get off. I'm ensuring that he has a fair trial. Obviously, success reinforces that we did a good job. But once you ensure the person has a fair trial, fair representations, you make submissions on your sentencing, he either gets a fair sentence he likes or not, but you just make sure he has a fair trial, make sure he has proper representation, and then you could sleep at night. It's a topic, how could you represent that person, But the system falls apart if we don't.
I'm dealing with also attorneys who receive threats from the public. How particularly in high-profile murder cases, how does the Criminal Bar Association deal with this or make representation on behalf of these attorneys who obviously will need some form of protection?
Yeah, well, I think just strengthening our young attorneys and realizing we're not friends with our clients. You don't exchange numbers, you don't, WhatsApp and all that. We know we are helping them with their case, and, you have to be firm. It's always best we work in twos, and I myself have never received any real threat. But I think I was trained well to build up a proper distance with the client. And I think the criminal bar can go a long way in strengthening young criminal attorneys that need the guidance. And strengthening them is strengthening the system. So the criminal bar hopes to do the mentorship program, resentencing project. And if you have us, come back on the show and talk about other topics.
I believe so, and I really want to get more information, or at least through you to the public in terms of the resentencing, the resentencing project, because obviously, how can representation be made? That means that the law books has to change.
Yes, it does.
The guidelines has to change.
So you have legislation, And then when the legislation is done unconstitutional, you know, you're going to need the judges make the law. But sometimes the judges run away with the law, and when the public finds out, the legislation has to step in. So with this sentencing project, I believe if the public know, I believe the sentencing commission should be set up. I was there 2018 to 2021. It was set up as a shell. We weren't able to accomplish much because it wasn't supported. I think there's an important role for the sentencing commission. Because
isn't that a statutory commission?
It's a statutory commission that was on the books since the act in 2000, but it was only set up under then President Carmona. But it didn't appear that it didn't get the resources it needed, because the sentencing commission will go out. We will hear from the public. We're going to tell you about sentences. You're going to tell us, no, that sentence is too low, this, that. And I think a society really gains its strength when the law and the authority comes from the people. It's not what the legislator wanted, not what the judiciary thinks is best, but talking to the people. And we know the people want that retribution. They want that retribution and that denunciation. They don't want that rehabilitation. We should convince them, we should attempt to convince them rehabilitation is not needed. But if they call for...
it's needed.
It is needed, sorry, is needed,
Yeah.
yes? And try to convince them otherwise. But how do you, because the crime is out of control.
I mean, and obviously you can't blame the public for the way they feel.
No.
So therefore, how do we strike that balance?
Yes.
I would believe that public education is key.
Yes.
The resources into that public education supported by influencers in society, whether it be the public officials, etc. All hands need to be on deck, because there would have been, I mean, there's many examples of persons who would have been reintegrated in society, rehabilitated. I mean, I have seen, well, based, not my personal clients, because I don't do criminal practice, but more my colleagues. You know, I would have done an episode on crime and punishment.
I saw it, very good.
Where a former inmate who served his time, you know, was remorseful and actually reintegrated and actually making progress.
Yes.
But then where the buck stops, because when we have, you also have to take into consideration the victim.
Yes, you do.
And the victim's family, and therefore, how can one feel safe knowing that, listen, whether it is a murder, whether it is a sexual assault, etc., how do I feel seeing this person reintegrate?
I think you made a really good point, because the views and the feelings and the position of the victims aren't really addressed in the criminal justice system. You're a victim of a crime. You become a witness. You're a witness in a case. You know, lawyers come and they cross-examine you, and they this, and you don't get no and it's almost you're a victim. It deters you to go to be a witness. You don't want to have to go through all of that. And then all the focus is on fair right for the accused, proper sentence. But what about the victim? And I think we need to take a greater consideration of the victim witnesses and their role in the criminal justice system and how their views are heard. We do take victim impact statements that are read into court. They are heard. They do have an opportunity. The biosocial do interview them. Very often they are for more severe sentences for the accused. The court does take into consideration of all those things. But, you know, we speak of justice as one thing, but justice for the accused is injustice for the victim. You know? It's a hard balancing exercise, and you're balancing rehabilitation versus retribution. You want that victim to feel satisfied that the person that's caused harm to me and my family members is punished. But you want that punishment not to go too far and lose the chance for rehabilitation. You know, no one walks away satisfied. No one does.
Particularly in light of the fact that we have a crowded prison system.
We have a crowded prison system, yes.
For another day, but I believe, you know, Daniel, in terms of how we move forward here and actually going into the field.
Yes.
I believe that's something that obviously we can explore,
Yes.
on Strictly Legal, and so that we can see firsthand, or interview firsthand
Yes.
these persons who would have served a life of crime and what they're doing, and especially what the Bar Association is doing.
Yes, of course, the Criminal Bar Association is not for profit.
Yes.
We are passionate about what we do. Lawyers are passionate, but we often don't have the medium. Our passion ends in the four walls of the courtroom and what we file. But for law to really exist at its proper force in society, we need non-lawyers to be interested in legal topics. You are doing an excellent job in this, and the Criminal Bar, is inspired by your program, and we hope, we can really come to light on a lot of topics.
Indeed.
I think it's all for the best.
And we will, and Daniel, we are out of time.
Yes.
Daniel Khan, thank you so much. I'm sure we would chat more,
Yeah.
right? And all the best in your pursuits.
Thank you very much, Doc.
So guys, it's a wrap. Thank you so much for watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Don't forget to check our replay as well as Strictly Legal podcast with Rondell. Donawa. I leave you with this quote: learn from yesterday, live for today, hope for tomorrow. God bless.